All right, let's wait for Kastuk. And then we're good to go. There's one step also that I missed on all this is how to install the actual Bepinex plugin that loads these Unity mods. There's one thing I skipped, and I think it's important to cover that. So let's wait for Kastuk here. Where is he? Second, if it's this folder here, right? All right, so installing the Bepinex plugin is going to build folder. And then there is the mods folder, which is basically, this is the basic, sorry. Let me start again. I don't know if the microphone was half muted or not. So inside the build folder, there are two more folders. So one is the actual DLLs that go into Unity, which is this ones. And then there is the stationary mods. This is the Bepinex plugin. This needs to go into, I believe it is this, no, that's not a folder. But I mean, I don't even have the folder in shortcuts. So in Bepinex, there is plugins, stationary mods. This folder has these files, mods, stationary mods, Cecil, blah, 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 blah. So that's basically a copy of this folder here. Inside the build folder, stationary mods. This is the Bepinex plugin that needs to be installed into Bepinex, and then the mods folder is where you export all your mods done in Unity. That's a step that we skip because I already have it installed, and I didn't think about that. Right, so we basically did all the setup stuff. Now we have our own draw mode script that does all the initialization of the prefabs, and then we attached to the blueprint asset. We attached the custom wireframe. Meaning our prefab actually needs to have the blueprint defined. Yeah, right. Well, with this done, we click export again. And now if you want to add more assets, all you need to do is just create them as you go, and then creating the classes, the prefabs, and then it all will be found by the exporting function and added as the game goes. So what this Unity tool does, it creates an asset bundle with all the scenes and prefabs that it founds and materials and whatnot. So basically it includes everything on a custom asset bundle, and then it exports this asset bundle for Unity. Right, since we have click export, we can just run the game now. There we go. And now should everything go fine in the log, you will see that it actually loads and find all your prefabs, and then it will actually show when it's adding your prefabs to the different game lists and so on. So let me just let it finish loading the game, which is doing right now. And when it shows in the main menu, it means that the test sphere here, test sphere, right? It found the blueprint, it found the test sphere, and it basically found all those different assets, and they should have added them to to the game. So it found the loading mode, which is the main class. It executed the main class. And then in here, you would see it found testing got test power tool. That's the other mod that it had installed. My guess here is at this point, it would have actually added everything to the list. We can actually check for testing got. Oh no, hang on. It should show up as well here. So it should find the prefab and then it should process the prefab instance, then it found the ingot thing, and then it found everything else. And this should be the same for test sphere. It should have actually found the prefab, but then it will need to add it as an item. So I'm not sure why this didn't quite work. I'm not sure. If I press F7 here and I go into the search scene, test sphere here, hasn't been added to the game yet. So now we have to check why this didn't work. So we have drone mode, classes ILO-dev, test mode loaded with blah, 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 blah. Let me double check that everything is fine here. Everything code drone mode. And then our assembly definition is assembly definition, yeah. Right, so everything is fine here and it's exporting into mods. And then inside the game, which is here, Steam apps, common Stationeers, Epinex plugin, Stationeer mods. We have our drone mod with our DLL and all the assets in here. Right, so something didn't quite work. Let me explore again. There's no errors on building, meaning it should have worked. What is getting me confused, yeah, so this one worked, is our main starting class, which is this drone mode. Actually, let me change that. Drone mode loaded with so many prefabs, right? So let's export that. I just want to double check whether it's loading, is finding the right class or not. That's something that I don't recall it ever happened before. I may have done something wrong and I want to double check. So let's run Stationeers again, and then we go through the log to see how many prefabs it found, which I believe we had 2 prefabs, right? All right, so we check the log now. Drone mode, loading mode, one assembly prefabs. Drone mode loaded, yeah, but it didn't run the class drone mode. Starting class not available. Looking through assemblies, it actually didn't find the class drone mode. And that's probably something that had to do, I believe, with an namespace, because here it's not going to find that without an namespace. So, okay, one thing we can do is remove the namespace in the main class. So in the drone mode file, we don't add the namespace. We leave it without namespace. That's fine. But you have errors. Okay. Is there a problem in this? That is a problem. So let me build again. Let me close the game. I'm not sure the code that I used to find this class, the starting class, considers the namespace on the main class. That's what the problem could be here. I believe I did export. I'm not sure, so I'm gonna click in. This is fast enough. Okay, so let's run the game now again. And then we check the log now for drone mode. Drone mode attached prefab is being called, meaning that's all right. So tester sphere now is found as a prefab. It instance, it's added as a thing, and then it's adding to the world manager. So that was basically the main mod class, the one that you define here as the one that needs to be run when the game loads. This cannot have a namespace. That was the only thing. Now, if I here look for test sphere, it should show up. Yeah. So now the game knows what to do with the test sphere, meaning you can just go load and save now, or start a new game, whatever you want to do. Right. Then on the spanning menu here, test the sphere is here. We spawn the sphere, and okay, think we missed something clearly, right? But it basically spawned in the game, and now it has its own physics and everything. Now we need to fix whatever the problem in here was. I'm not quite sure what the problem is. So let's go have a look at the log. Stackable, yeah, get passive tooltip. So the problem is that we're missing something on the passive tooltip when you actually have a look at the object. That it would show up like if we drop tomato here, cooked tomato, eat and cooked tomato. Tomato was good. Yeah, eat and cooked tomato. If we spawn this, when you look at it, it displays how many it has on the thing. So I'm not sure whether there is a problem in when we defined the object, we may have missed something, which is probably related to the collider, that it cannot find an item, so it cannot spawn the number of objects on the stack. That's basically the main problem it has right now. So let's have a look at the actual Unity collider, hit collider, get passive tooltip. Let's have a look at the main blueprint here. This is the test script, right? And then I believe we may have missed a collider somewhere. It needs to be defined. So we define the riggy body. And then has a decayed fruit here. Doesn't have an animator. The blueprint is defined. Paintable material, we don't really care. It has a sphere collider. It has this size, 0.5. Should it be a trigger collider? Let's find out on the actual tomato item, right? So if we search for the Object Explorer, if we search for the cooked tomato, item cooked tomato, we go to the box collider, and then what we wanted to find out is whether it's a trigger or not. This trigger is false. So that means it's just a normal collider, nothing else, which is reference to the parent object of the eaten cooked tomato. It has nothing else to do. Am I missing something? here where it needs to have this collider thingy. We can actually have a look at the code as well to find out where is getting the collider. Let me just run down this quickly. Static colliders, we don't have defined anything. I don't think this one will have defined any collider as well. We go to colliders. It doesn't have any static, dynamic, or self colliders defined. So on that point, we are still okay. That's good. And then this is everybody, which is good. Side grip, cast animation, attack on server, trade value, whatever, doesn't really matter. Impact audio coding, interaction index. Oh, yeah, I think I know what the problem is here. Because a stackable item would actually need actions. Has interactions, true. That's the problem. That we didn't provide the interactions, I believe, to split the stack in one or in half, which is basically something that happens every time you have a stackable item, right? Well, that's something that we can quickly do as well. So we can probably copy that from any of the objects in game, or we can actually go into our test or template here, which I want to go to the prefab test or, right? And then on the interactables here, we need to add this. This is where it's not finding the actual collider. This is where it's probably failing. So all we have to do is just copy a split one. Hang on, let me go to interactables. We can just add one for now. Not that. I wanted to copy split one. Then the hash is this one. Then the parent is this one. The collider will find out. Bones we don't need, has animation, no, can key interact. Can key interact. I think we may be able to get away with this. I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure yet. Yeah, let's have one interactable for now. Export. We may be missing something else. I just don't know yet. That's now part of the discovery, how the game defines all the assets. And that has nothing to do with the Unity side of it. I mean, you need to learn how the game, what the game is expecting from every one of these assets to have defined. Another thing we can do here is we know it's from the stackable. I don't know how to type now. How is this stackable, right? That's the interface. So we're gonna need to make sure that we provided all the elements required for the stackable part of the asset of the interface in the component. Let's try with the change. Let's say mod test world. Test the sphere. Oh no. Test the sphere. Yeah, there you go. So now you can pick it up. It will show up in the inventory. You can move it around, right? You can, if you press R, well, actually you move it to the head first, and you press R, it will show split one. But we don't really have anything defined here. We should have defined an action on that, which I think I missed. I'm not sure. Hang on a second. Open the prefab, go interactables. Action here. I should have put split one, I believe, or something like that. The action should be button 2. Right, so that should be the action. Button 2 is a split one. And because it doesn't have the actual button now, it doesn't know how to split, but we can probably eat it. Right click, consuming. And this is working, it's just too slow. That's the only difference. And we cannot split because we actually didn't define the right action for the splitting thingy. Right, we're filled up now. We can throw it. We can store. We can put it in inventories. And basically now it's a game asset. It's a actual kind of broken game asset, but it's working. So that's the problem with the stackable items. You need to provide, it is expecting to have functions to unstack or split the stacks or whatever, because if it wasn't a stackable item, you can still stack the items, but you cannot split them. That's what happens with the actual ingots. The ingots, you can stack them, but you cannot unstack them. You can stack them and you can split them on a machine, but you cannot split them in the hand. And that's why they don't have interactions, but they are not defined as stackable. They just have a max value on them. If you go to any of the classes of those items, like let's say it was an org class, but I don't know how many of them could be there. No, ingot. Right, so the ingot, it doesn't inherit from stackable, right? Because it doesn't need to be splitted or something, but it can still have, and that's part of the theme definition, it can still have a max stack size, which is here, I believe, stackable max quantity. If we go on the ingot on the test prefab that I have here, you will see how it can stack up to 500. It's not stackable, but you can still stack pieces out of the machines. It doesn't need the stackable interface, so it doesn't need the interactions to unstack them, to split them. Right, and with that, the problem is, so some assets are just that. Now you can define your own, you add your mono behavior, you make it behave like whatever you want. As long as it's a thing and has all the dynamic thing and everything, it should be easy to use. There are some other items like cartridges, things like that, that are quite complicated. They are more different than this. So the cartridge, which is something that, no, the prefab cartridge, which is something that Kastuk is interested in, it actually needs panels, right? And if you go to the actual prefab, you will see that at some point, it will actually ask for screens, which I believe it is down at the bottom, you see? So the tablet is the actual tablet object where this cartridge is inserted. Now the transform of the panel is the location of the panel. And then if it has a scroll bar, you have to actually provide the reference to the scroll bar as well. So you need to define a canvas where you put all your things, but you have to make it invisible. Otherwise, it will happen like what happened with the air conditioning machine that I left this. I exported this prefab with the canvas active, and then there's actually a screen that is visible alongside with the actual cartridge, but you don't want that. You want to have the canvas invisible when you export the item. Now, with the canvas visible and this panel normal, which is the actual location or the main rec transform or your screen, that's what you need to define in the cartridge. You have to actually drag the reference of the screen canvas or the panel normal, whatever you want, into this rec transform of the cartridge. And this actually tells the game, if the cartridge is turned on, where do I get the screen? So I put it back in its place into the inside the tablet. So it's visible. You can define the screen wherever you want. See how far it is from the actual cartridge. It's not even aligned to the cartridge or anything, but that's something that the game later will adjust. You just need to provide the reference to the panel, to the main transform of the panel, and then it will actually do a transform, rotation, translation, and scaling, I believe, to fit that screen inside the tablet screen. Then you define title, whatever you need on your actual screen display. But that's something that you handle. All you need to provide is the panel. What you need to provide for the game to actually show the tablet is the actual panel or a scroll bar. It has one. And then if you wanted a title, you can give it a title, but there's really no reason to do that. Right. And then that's the thing. This is exported from the cartridge side of things. So I didn't fill this up. This one is filled up. So, yes, so this one will probably have this text area here dragged in there. What you want to do is in your actual code on the cartridge code, which is in a scripts cartridge. In your code, you define all your stuff, like the number of rooms. Those are variables being used by the tablet, right? And then you define the text reference content. This is what you are, it's a public thingy. So that's what is showing up in here. The content thing in this prefab, right? This is being displayed here, cartridge content. Because in your code, on the update screen or whatever you want, you can just reference this text object, right? Content text equals to whatever you want to write in there. And then there is an actual button, which is an action on the button itself. So here on the button device, this text button, this is a button that has an action associated to it, which I believe it is in here. Click on this button, it will run this function, which is this function button press that will actually show something on the log and then damage your lungs just to show that it was working or not. Then there is, whenever you have a display screen, you will need the on-screen update and you will need the on-pre-screen update. So basically, this is where you calculate your screen or you kind of refresh your screen code. And this is where you display the screen code. That's the way the game handles the tablet screens, which is very similar to how the game defines other screens, like the circuit board, which I believe this is the air conditioning circuit board, which is this canvas here that is here. No, it's showing. Other the panel normals probably. I don't know. It's not showing up. Oh, canvas render. Ah, God damn, I need to open the prefab first if I want to have a look at that. Circuit board. Right. So this is the air conditioning circuit board. And the air conditioning, the circuit boards have two screens. One is the configuration screen, the other one is the normal screen, the operating screen. These two are defined in the circuit board script, right? So it has the air conditioner, it has the main screen and the config menu. It requires a button, a prefab for the buttons, a dynamic grid to display the device list, and then the title for the main screen, the button for the main screen, and every other stuff that you want to do. And this is, hang on, let me actually now cover this. This is the config screen that is being displayed when you actually put the disk on the console. And this inside, it has this grid, it has the title, and then it will have the grid. This is where the game will actually fill all the devices on the config screen. And then it also has the main operating screen, which is when you remove the disk, what needs to be displayed. Why is it not showing? Oh, it's probably showing up. It's just in a different location, right? Oh no, this is the actual different screen. This is the one that has the air conditioning thing. Right. This is what is being displayed on the screen in here. If we go here, and then I go into test circuit board, and that's what I meant. Ah, no, I already fixed that. Right. So if we put this one here and then we turn it on, this is the screen that's been displayed in the main screen. And if we put a disk, it will actually show the other screen. And then the rest is just more code to actually teach the game how it needs to operate. That's basically, if you pick up any circuit board in here, like a airlock, for example, right? So airlock control based, maybe airlock is a bit more complicated. Solar circuit board, solar control, right? So solar control is basically the same type of circuit board, which is a circuit board. And then it has all the interfaces for the circuit board. What happened? This is a custom buttons for this custom class, but it will have an update each frame. It will have a on device list change, which is triggered every time the device list change on the network. It will have motherboard commands, update the screen. Basically, it's the same as this one has in here. If I go into circuit board and I edit this script, it's basically kind of the same. Can device link, on device list change. If there is an error, should draw, update each frame, update the visuals, update the buttons, update up and close. Basically, it's just filling up the interfaces that the circuit board has. And that's how you make your own kind of circuit board. But circuit board, so the tablet, the cartridge only has one canvas. The circuit board needs two. One is the main operating canvas, which is one, and the other one is the config canvas, which is this one, right? Because that's what the game expects. If you inherit from circuit board, it will actually ask you for two screens. One is the main, the config menu, the other one is the main screen. And you need to provide a title, you need to provide the type of buttons, you need to provide, no, this is air conditioner, this is actually the air conditioning device is linked to. But the config menu would require a prefab for the button, which I already made as well. So there's a prefab in here on the template. Just the thing is, I made this prefab just to mimic the same. So this is the button, just to mimic the same color and aesthetics of the game. So when you actually put a disk in the game here, the screen that is being shown up is very similar to the actual. I may not have. I'm not going to be able. Oh, yeah, here you go. It's very similar to the original ones, but there's no need for this. You can actually have your custom icons, your custom colors, screen, text, layout, whatever. As long as you provide a grid to be filled up with the devices, everything else is just up to you. You can provide your own styling and whatever. That's just, I'm trying to match the game as much as possible. And then the motherboard also has one screen, I believe. I'm not quite sure yet. So that would be the motherboard is here. Oh, this is the mess only. Motherboard. The motherboard in here, yeah, it only has one canvas, which is this one, which I believe it is disabled because you need to export it disabled, which is this one. And that one is filled up as you go on the, that's the manufacturing. This is not the one I wanted. This card changes, it's probably this one. Yeah, that's the one that I wanted. So you can put the screen wherever you want. As long as it's disabled, it won't show up. When you turn the computer on, when you actually put the motherboard inside the computer, it will relocate the screen to the actual computer screen. And when you turn it on and off, it will actually display the canvas and remove the canvas. So basically, it will do a test motherboard. And then we put it inside. So now, you know how in the prefab, they are basically attached one each other, right? That means that the screen is somewhere around here because, but since I imported it into the computer, it actually moved the screen. Now the canvas is moved into here and it's a stretch to fit the screen. So it will now show up in the proper screen and it will just stop working. Now, this is a 2D canvas. And if you take a look at it, it's just a 2D canvas, right? It really doesn't have things standing outside of the plane, but there's no reason for that. You can actually have a button, this button, the launch button moved outside of the, this is the main button. Yeah, you can have the main button here or actually here. And that's where it will be rendered because that's a 3D object in reality. It's just a 2D because you want to make it a screen, but it doesn't need to. You can actually move things around it if you want. And I don't know what else. What we can do now quickly is go into here, fix this interactable. It needed to be, I believe it was button one. Split one was button one, right? Yeah. So we save, export, restart the game, and that should do it. And right now the splitting should work, splitting only one. So consumables are unstackable. Yep, that's correct. Consumables have they're not stackable. They still have different number of items in the stack, but they are not user stackable per se. You need a machine to do the stacking of that. Being stackable means that you can actually pick up one, split half, attach one to another. Like if you pick a cable and you have cables, they will actually stack on the same group. which doesn't happen with the ingots because you have ingots in your hand, you cannot pick up more ingots and add more ingots to the stack. So load save, mod testing. Let's spawn test the sphere. Right, so the idea is that we should be able to split now by ones, and then we should be able to grab them one by one as well. Yeah, there you go. That was it. And with that, pretty much, we're done. There you go. Questions? Do you have any questions? Let's see. 4 questions. Right, start the framework, add the model of the game, make synchronization of motion and NPC and send the message from the server and client. Right, so number 2, I'm not quite sure what you meant with number 2, add the model to the game, change the parameter of one object in another. But we basically kind of did that. So we added a sphere, which you don't need to be a sphere. And then there is a component on the blueprint here, this wireframe, custom wireframe script that would actually do a change on one of the components. Right. So this one, every time you spawn the wireframe, oh, that's something that we didn't show up. Hang on. So if I grab this, and then I do now a refine placement, you see how it actually uses the proper shader, despite we never actually introduced this shader in the game, right? That's because this component here gets the renderer, which is a custom, which is a really default, very, very default material, right? We go into blueprint here. This has a very basic material on our prefab, right? It has a normal actual material on the mesh renderer. It has the default material. So it replaces this material in runtime with the actual alpha self-illumination. That's the one that's been used to do this rendering of objects. So that will be number 2. Now, synchronization and motion of RPC and command messages from server to client, and then checking multiplier. This is now being handled by the game engine because you have already everything that the game needs to know to make this item a network item. It actually has a network ID, the main blueprint, right? It has a network ID here. And then it has the network serialization and deserialization for all the different aspects of the prefab that it has. Now, if you still want to send additional data, that would require you to write code and write custom network messages. But that has nothing to do with the prefab thing. That's now something. So this works in multiplayer right now. There's no need for anything else. Now you want to have custom data sent between client and server. That has nothing to do with this item. That's a different thing now. And then saving and loading the object. It's already doing that. I mean, if you have a look at this tablet here, which we just loaded from the save, it already has a custom cartridge on it. We never injected the cartridge in this tablet. It was already saved like that. So this is actually now being saved by the game because it has the serialization and deserialization functions for that. Make a standard tomato flying. Right, so basically now on your prefab here, you can add now any custom component that you want. So you can add a custom script that adds rotation, for example, right? And then if you edit this script, well, it needs to build the whole thing, but if you edit this script now,